I want to remind you guys, I do have a full course just on the pansy with some butterflies there, and again, really pushing yourself on that daisy stroke. There's just so many different assignments just on the daisy stroke, so that way you're focusing on that daisy stroke and then doing a bunch of different ways and things with it, so then that way it really pushes your memory to get that stroke perfected. And then again, when you get into the shell strokes, there's a variety of different ways of really bumping that shell stroke a little bit differently. And then I gave you guys an assignment to play around with different colors and play with like 11 different centers in there, just to kind of open up your mind of, that 5-petal shell stroke or teardrop flower can look like any flower. It could look like poppies, just by playing around with all your little centers differently. Right, and then my liner one is my fun thing I got you guys to do with the push flower with my liner practice. Again, pushing you guys right out of your comfort zone, doing wacky things with that brush you never imagined, and really listening up. Like I said, that liner practice is definitely one of my favorite courses. And then, of course, our basic teardrops and one-stroke leaves and sunflowers and all that is in the whole package, guys. So again, if it's been a while since you've seen it and been a while since you've been able to play, definitely we need to warm up and play and practice again. And it's always good to do that on paper before we go and grab those balls and start working on something, whether it be a candle, whether it be a glass vase, whether it be whatever you want to do, right? So I've given you lots of different ideas in my painting hack, guys. Those are free videos for you guys to check out on what should I practice on and why, right? So slippery surfaces, dry surfaces, stuff like that. I've given you a bunch of different ideas. Go check out my painting hacks, and if you haven't seen them yet. And so yeah, definitely, if you have any questions, you can pop them down in the chat here if you want. We'll play around with a little quick pansy for you too. And what Holly was asking was a fancy pansy to show us, and I did do a course on that, guys. I did have my practice course with the pansy, and then I did make a full course project that's available. Let's see if I can find it for you. Oh, that's the Christmas balls that we just did. And this is my flower pattern that goes around like in a circle. And there's a lot of variety of different pansies in there, and definitely there's a couple of really fancy ones where I was really rocking those petals back and forth. And you definitely got to be comfortable with that brush and dancing with it and jumping back up on that chisel and flipping, flopping the other way, right? So hopefully you guys have got a chance to work yourself through my whole program. Like I said, by the time you get into the advancing leaves and the poppies, you're starting to get into those advanced rolled strokes that I'm talking about, right? So if you haven't seen them before, I'll give you guys a quick little demo here on that. Alright, so I'm working on paper. Definitely there's a good chance that I might sneak in a little bit of floating medium, but I always say, if you guys haven't heard it before, definitely I call it an as needed kind of product, because I always like to feel out my surface, feel out the paint, see how thick my paint is. Sometimes I have old paint and it doesn't flatten out like that when you bang it on the table, then you know that your paint might be a little bit too thick, right? So stuff like that, temperature of your room, how long your paint has been on your plate, all those things make different variations of what's going to happen when you're working, right? Your brush is starting to get dry and goopy. You got to try to moisten it again, clean out, you've been doing a lot of painting, then definitely you have to refocus things again a little bit sometimes. So that's why I always try to just put out a tiny little bit of paint as I need it, and then even if I'm doing a big project, I definitely would rather keep adding fresh paint a little at a time, so then that way I can keep that focused, and then I'm not messing around with this floating medium as much. Alright, so a lot of people put way too much paint on their plates at one time, right? So definitely want to do a little bit of a coral. I love this engine red and moon yellow. It's a really brilliant corally kind of color for any color, and then always adding just that little bit of white just a little bit. And then I still like to keep that yellow enough so then when I want that third color, right, so by itself, you can see that that's still a little bit dry, but it's on paper, guys. So what the biggest trick I can share with you is just slow down on this paper and really allow that paint to suck up, right? And then, like I said, I want to keep that a little bit still strong yellow so that when I want to have that extra little highlight in there, I can do that and add that little extra white. Alright, so looking at my gradient, I can see that I really don't have enough red in my brush. I kept adding yellow and not enough red. Alright, so definitely got to add both colors a little bit at a time. Right, push down that gradient down a little bit, right, so you can see a little bit more yellow. Right, so if you're not getting the results that you're looking for, definitely gotta, see what you can do to change things. Right, it's always something they gotta work at, and it's not always gonna be perfect the first time. Right, the more you play, the more it definitely will come, right? You'll start to recognize the issue that you're having and you'll be able to correct it a lot faster. So definitely when you play with pansies, it's having that back pedal a little bit different, right? Bouncing down, down, up, down, down, up, down, down, up. You can definitely put a nice pedal that's, you want to be a little bit more fancy. Definitely traditionally it's all just very simple, easy wiggles all the way around, right? So just playing around with different variations of your wiggle, right? So sometimes you are doing up, down, down, up, down, down, up, right? That gets a little bit more fancy. Especially when you're doing it with the reverse with the dark on the edge. You want to have maybe a little bit more light than you do dark. Okay, so we have that little bit of light, so we want to have that same kind of gradient when we're flipping our brush up too. Okay, so we're going to push on that brush a little bit more, get that more yellow in there. And then when you're doing the down, down, up, this is where you're starting to do your backflip. Right? You'll have more room when you do that down, down, up. You're gonna go back and you have lots of room. Right? So you don't have to be so dramatic, but definitely having that little bit bigger scoop. Get up on that chisel and push back. Right, so basically it's that little dolphin nose that we're putting in there. Right, so sometimes we have that with our pansies too, especially when we want to do a little bit more of a fancier petal. Right, so definitely you have to have a little bit more of a pivot point, so you're doing more like a teardrop shape as opposed to a U shape, right? Sometimes we can do a little bit more fanned out, bring it right out to the side and then in, so you're going a little bit more like a V instead of like a straight to straight, right? So it's all different variations, right? And having a little bit more of a V, an open V. See the shape that we're going on here. Okay, so see how it's slowly small and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger and then slowly starting getting smaller, right? So a lot of the biggest thing with the shell stroke that I see all the time is people are doing it a little bit too straight, or they're doing it all the same size. Right? They're not giving it a nice round shell stroke. It's too flat. So we got to come up on that. Alright, I'm still trying to fight with my paint, not adding any medium. So smaller, bigger, bigger, and then you're going to stay consistent for a few. Then you're coming back down, down, down. Alright, so you got that nice shell movement. Alright, so this is the biggest part of the pansy that a lot of people have a problem with, is that first petal at the very back. Okay. Does that make sense with you guys there with your shell strokes? Alright, so again, a little bit more pivot. But I'm coming smaller, bigger, bigger, higher, smaller, smaller, smaller. Okay, so you should have that height up there. Okay. And then it doesn't matter what color you do your pansies, but a lot of times we like to do them to give it lots of contrast, is getting that, reverse the colors, right? So where do you put that next stroke? Right, so a lot of times people are too far away or they're too far up, right? So you can definitely start just along the inside of this one. They should overlap just slightly, right? Because then if you go too high, you're cutting off that look and you're not getting that small, medium, you know, you don't want to hide all your nice, beautiful stroke you did up there, right? So again, with a pivot point, one, a little bit bigger, a little bit bigger. But these side ones, definitely, you have to be a lot bigger and wider for your stroke. Okay, so if you want to do two, if you want to, like a lot of times you can do 2 strokes on the side. Depends on how frilly you want to do that. Right, so you can make 1, and then you can add a second side. Right, you're going to add a little bit more white. So basically you got to make this one shell stroke, you know, almost the same width as if you were going to do 2. Much wider than, right? So again, you can cut this a little bit smaller. Put a little bit more white in it. Oops, a little bit messy there. Go back, refocus my paint. Right, so then I've got a nice wide side to it. I'm going to go over that again, just a little bit more white, and pull in. Right, so again, pivot point. Oop, I don't want this to be too white. I want the back one to be a little darker, and then pull in. Right, so it's just like a wiggly teardrop. And then you're going to tip with a little bit more white. And then add a second one. Right, you see how much nicer that one turned out. One always turns out better than the other, guys. Definitely being right-handed and left-handed may make a bit difference. Right, one side will be a little bit easier to do than the other. Okay, and then what you do is flip your brush around again. The same color combinations. Okay, and then we can add a simple teardrop and another little teardrop. Okay, so it should be really round, not too wide, not too tall. Pansies are a very round flower, right? And then you can add a little darker dot if you want, something that's like a sap green or something like that. And then definitely that's your basic pansy. And then if you want to add just a little bit more of a bump, right, you can go and add these little dolphin noses right at the very top. Show you again a little bit closer. Okay, just adding just that little bit of white. Get right up on that chisel, right along the line that you started with. Pull just very gently, and then press, and then pull right up to that point. Okay. So once you've got happiness with your basic pansy, right, then definitely, you know, you can play around. You might need just a little bit of movement more with your corner of your brush that's doing more work, right? So when you're doing these rocking and rolling strokes, the top of that red is doing more work than anything else, right? You got a pivot point. That yellow hardly is doing anything, but it's got to be in there, right? So again, I got to change my colors. I like to flip my brush around, put a little bit of pressure on that back. I got to shove that red back up to a 3/4 fade. Right, the more you play, the more you feel more comfortable. And again, I like separating these side ones, right, into a little bit smaller ones. Right, you can overlap. And I like to push you guys to really force yourself to paint in without flipping your page around. Right, learn how to get, oh, a little bit darker yellow here. Right, learn how to dance with that brush and curl it in all the different directions. Right, it'll have more, you'll see it'll be just a little bit more dance in your stroke too. Right, pretend it's a wall and you can't move it. Okay. You can move your plate though. I love spinning my plate around. Keeps me focused. I ended up going upside down. Okay, so I'm a little bit flat here, so I got to bring that teardrop down just a little bit lower. Right, so a little bit lower and a little bit lower. Okay. Again, advancing yourselves slowly is ideally what you should do, right? You start with the basic ones, and then as you keep playing with all the different flowers, then you'll definitely start dancing with your brush. You'll be able to even rock and roll your little, I call them dolphin noses. Okay. And then of course, if you want to go over anything, I always like cheating. Right, you can always go and grab a little smaller brush, and this is when I love floating medium. If there's anything that I didn't like, then I can come and make just a little tiny soft gradient, and I can't see it white on white there. Right, I know I'm cheating now. Right, so I want to add just a little bit more highlight. Then I can always just go and sneak that in. Right, I liked it on the other side. I wanted to add a little bit more on the other side. Alright, and then again, I don't have any other colors on my plate right now, so. Alright, always add your little center in there. Definitely looks better when you put something a little darker in there. Here, guys. Quick little pansy for you. Alright, right? So definitely working your way, practicing the individual strokes, right? And understanding the size proportions is definitely a big thing about the Pansy. Alright, so I have a whole whack of sheets for you guys if you jump on that practice one. Right, we play around and I do all of these in the course, practice course. For you. And then I've got sheets somewhere. Oh yeah, on the back. Right, again, all the different strokes all the way around. It's all broken down on sheets for you that you guys can print out. Right, and or even the back of a pansy, right? Try to do some smaller little bud ones, and the actual pansy leaf, right? It's a little bit different style. And so yeah, a lot of people were. I'm using just a very cheap cardstock. It's not like printer paper. It's not that thin. It's still like a cardstock, but it's definitely the cheapest you can get. I get a big package of it, as cheap as I can get on Amazon. And the company that I was getting it from, let's see, I can barely get Spring Hill. Alright, Spring Hill Digital National Paper, gray. Definitely gray is what you need for practicing, because then you can see where you put white. Because a lot of people like to do something with white and then you're on white paper and you can't see it. So gray is basically a very neutral color that will pop up any color. So you can practice all of your dark strokes on the edges, the light strokes, any strokes, and any color combinations. You'll be great on a gray paper. Right? A lot of people like to go on that black paper right away, and definitely it has its own set of challenges. And you definitely won't see the true result of your stroke work if you start practicing on black. And then white is definitely going to make your challenges too. When you want to see those little white edges pop out, definitely you won't see it on white paper. So if you haven't got any gray, then definitely I suggest. The weight, it's like I said, it's really cheap. It's not that thick. I actually have cardstock that I've bought to make cards with that is much thicker and heavier. The numbers I really don't know, but you'll know by the how cheap it is by how many pages you get in the back. Because some are so expensive, you get maybe like 50 pages in a pack, and you're still paying good money for it. So yeah, definitely. That's where I got the best value. There's a couple paper pads out there. Oops. This is just scrapbooking paper. Again, it's just like the thinness of photocopy paper. But again, you do get some nice colors and designs and weird backgrounds that you can play with. I found this pack here, actually at work. Somebody got rid of it, so when I seen all the different type of animal prints and stuff like that, that would be fun to play on. Right, so yeah, definitely you can consider that too, but just know that if you make any of these papers too wet, if you play with too much medium or water, that's when it really starts to buckle. Right, so try to stay away from too wet, and then hopefully your paper will stay, fairly smooth for you, won't buckle on you. You like that, guys? So yeah, definitely I try to make it a little bit informal, try to, give you guys the opportunity to pick my brain. Some of you guys are my VIPs, and they use this opportunity to help troubleshoot anything that they're having a hard time with my program. So I'm always happy to show you guys again and give you guys a little bit more food for thought, right? How to build yourselves up with the stroke work. And then definitely you can do a really nice design with a pansy here. Right, make sure your water, when you clean your brushes, make sure you're really drying that brush. I have to say that a lot because a lot of people don't realize that how wet their brush is and waterlogged it is, and then they're not getting good results with the paint as well. Right, so I'd rather add medium, oops, to my paint if I need a little bit more runny, right? I want that paint to be as nice and strong as possible. My sap is a tiny bit thick. So again, just a lot of wiggles and a rounder petal. Right, so when your brush really needs to do a lot of work and come back all the way around, that's when I'm going to go for the medium more, right? When you're doing small little strokes, then that's when, like daisy strokes, that's when you don't need as much medium. Okay. All the way around, definitely rounder at the top. Right, run out of paint, just go grab some more. Finish that stroke, work your way down. If I have to go over things, especially on paper, you just know that you gotta go over it again. Right? Add a little leaf. Let's pick an empty bottles to work with tonight. I have so many I want to finish up before I open new ones. Alright, so a lot of people are having a hard time with that reversed color gradient. It's dark on the outside. Alright, so the last flower series I did on my practice library is all about reversed painting. Right, so having that little bit of gradient. Let's do, which one did I do? Little and big. Right, so just a little bit of a teardrop with a bump. Right, and then I did just a teardrop at the bottom. Right, you can make this a little bit more peaky if you want. Right. Give yourself a quick butterfly. And then I go grab some water, because with your liner brushes, you only paint that I need water with. I don't use medium. Right, just add just a little bit, because we want coverage, but we want it to move, so I always test it. Right, see how thin, how much can you tickle your surface to make that really super thin. Right, you can always push on it to make it fat, but definitely just very, very little paint. Right, load up my whole brush with paint, but then just to give it movement. Right. And then you can always give yourself a little bit more lined look. Oops, I was gonna wiggle and then I stopped my wiggle halfway. Right, and then your push. And then pull through with a nice tail. Right, so a little bit of blue and green together. And then we'll pop up some stamens. I can't wait for spring, right? I had enough with this yucky winter already. Right, then I'm gonna go just below it. And then cross right over and come right back to the same little point. It gives it a little bit more interesting look. Alright, so you can make some fun little designs. This would be fun on a Christmas ball too. You can hang these balls up all through the year too if you make them a little bit more floral and decorative, and you're just using the ball as a decorative piece in your home. It doesn't have to signify only Christmas. But some people like to decorate them all year round. keep them as an ornament. Alright, so I have a whole course, guys, on wildflowers and bugs. Right, my course number 6 is all definitely full of different wildflower ideas. There's the practice of each, and then there's also a project that I did. So it's like 3 in 1 course, all in course number 6. So there's lots and lots and lots to play with. So by the time you finish the first 5 courses, definitely you'll be jumping on playing a lot more after that, doing a lot more assignments like this, and all the basic flowers. Alright, so definitely you guys know that you can send me pictures on Facebook too, so I can see a little bit closer. If you have any questions of your practice, send them to me on Facebook. Please also join our community Facebook group, right? I've got 2 groups. The one group that is community for everybody definitely is linked off my page. If you haven't joined us in our other community group, definitely that's where you guys can share all of your work that you've done, and different projects that you've done, and your aha moments maybe you want to share that you've had from some of my courses would be lovely to see. So yeah, hopefully you guys like my little demo on the Pansy here. You'll jump on my full program, and it'll definitely give you more breakdown, a little slower, and all the parts and sheets there to go with it.